Today I settle all family business, so don't tell me you're innocent. You have to answer for Santino, Carlo.
In The Godfather, the one event that completely changed the paradigm of the Corleone family's fight for supremacy was the trap placed for the acting Don Sonny Corleone. There was someone within the family that had conspired to have him taken out, a traitor, a rat. But even though this was obvious to the Don and his inner circle, he let the culprit roam free within his home. But after years of rebuilding and slowly repairing some of the damage caused, Michael finally confronts this traitor after years of putting them at ease, giving them a false sense of security, making it seem as though they foolishly had no idea what was truly going on. And as you know, this traitor was Carlo Rizzi. But the question that we've all been wondering is, how did Michael know? Although we can assume that he saw through that.
Boss, you played with my sister. You think that could fool a Corleone?
But as we looked into this a bit deeper, it's actually not as simple or as clear as we all thought. In fact, it was actually quite shocking. At the height of the Five Families War, Carlo betrayed the Corleone family and played a crucial role in taking out the acting boss, Santino Corleone, shifting the balance of power in the war. After Sonny is taken out, the Don gathers what strength he had left and goes to negotiate a peace deal with the other families, which put them in a bad and quite humiliating position. But he knew that if the family was to survive, he would need some time and make sure his son Michael is back to take over and regain their position on top. And so, after Michael returns, a couple of years go by and he's now the new Don. And the time had come to settle all the family's unfinished business. One of them was avenging his older brother's murder. But after seemingly giving Carlo more responsibility and having him enter the closely knit inner circle, even becoming godfather to his son, Michael confronts Carlo on his betrayal, which completely shocks him. But the question we all have is, how? How did Michael uncover that it was Carlo who had betrayed the family and that had pulled that little stunt courtesy of Don Barzini? How was Michael able to even get a confession from Carlo, revealing the final thread of this scheme? And why did Michael and Don Vito allow themselves to be perceived as weak and naive? Well, this goes back a lot further than you'd think. Yeah, this was part of a masterful setup that was years in the making. He somehow managed to skillfully utilize one of the most powerful laws of power, giving us a true master class that you need to understand. Like the video and join the Culture Mafia, or you might end up like Carlo. So first we need to put things into perspective. Let's start with Carlo's quite hidden background story. Carlo was half Sicilian, half North Italian. He grew up in Nevada for a while and worked in the scorching heat as a laborer. Following some trouble with the law, Carlo migrated to New York City, where he would eventually befriend Santino Corleone, and later introduce him to the family in 1941 at a surprise birthday party for Sonny's father, Vito. He would soon marry Connie on the last Saturday of August 1945 in a traditional Sicilian wedding at the Corleone compound, a compromise made in order to appease Vito, who was quite disappointed with his daughter's choice in a husband. Now part of the family, Carlo expected to be given some vital responsibilities in the family's operations. He seemed ambitious and desperate to prove himself to acquire power, which sort of backfired.
Now, your new son-in-law will give him something important. That would give him a living, but that would discuss the family business.
Even though he was given a nice little business to operate, a lucrative bookmaking operation in Manhattan, he turned out to be incredibly incompetent. He ran the business into the ground and spent his days as a real perdente. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why Vito allowed Carlo to treat Connie like he did, and it's quite strange. And we won't get into it too deeply, but this quote from the novel seems to sum it up. A fact that emboldened Carlo even more and actually used to brag and show off. Fast forward to the War of the Five Families. The family was not in a very good position. Both sides were suffering and reached a stalemate. The war seemed never-ending, and even with the skirmishes across New York were taking place, there seemed to be no end in sight. Even the other families were laying low after a very successful string of attacks orchestrated by Sonny, where Sonny turned out to be a great tactician, fighting toe-to-toe with all these experienced Dons. he still lacked that decisive strategic prowess that Vito possessed that was necessary to finish the war. Even so, soon enough both sides were suffering immensely, even having to close or downsize some of their most profitable businesses as a result, one of which was Carlo's bookmaking operation, which played a role in building up the tension between him and Sonny. So why did Carlo betray the Corleone family in the first place? Well, to start off with, one of the main reasons Carlo married Connie was to secure a place in the Corleone family. He saw the opportunity to secure a place in this extremely powerful and wealthy family, but instead of becoming one of the Don's trusted men, entering his close-knit and tight circle, he was left as an outcast, given a small living for himself, but never getting the prestige and influence he wanted. And with what he saw as his mistreatment, he took it out on his wife, which strained his relationship with Sonny and deteriorated his chance of ever rising through the ranks of the Corleone family. The final straw came during the height of the Five Families War, when Sonny was the acting Don and was leading the family through this conflict. Carlo's bookmaking business was heavily affected, even having to close it down at some point. So Carlo was just to sit around and pretty much do nothing except drinking and giving his wife a hard time, taking out all his built-up anger, resentment, and frustration on Connie. For years at this point, he took his anger out on Connie, but this time, Sonny was not going to sit silent. The Don was not here to hold him back. Sonny completely humiliated Carlo in front of his neighborhood, where he gave him a good beatdown. Carlo knew better than to fight back. If he just held back long enough, Sonny would stop and let him live. But following the humiliation he faced, he had finally had enough. And Carlo would go and make a phone call that would change everything. You see, this little incident had caught the attention of the cunning Don Barzini, who saw the opportunity to finally shift the war to his favor. Barzini had gotten in contact with Carlo and struck a deal where they would lay out a trap for the acting boss, Sonny, in which, if successful, would finally destroy the Corleone family, shifting the tide of this war that would be the catalyst in the collapse of this mighty empire. And Carlo agreed. So, Barzini would begin scheming now with the direct help of someone within the Corleone family. But now this all begs the question, how did Michael actually know? Well, to put it simply, he didn't. Let me explain. It was actually Don Vito and Tom Hagen who knew there was a rat, a traitor amongst them, and Carlo seemed to be the obvious suspect. This is clear as day in the novel. After Sonny, full of rage, was on his way to confront Carlo, he was taken out in a surprise ambush. It was brilliantly set up. Their enemies had learned from the first time. There was no escaping it this time. But after this news had spread, instead of holding Carlo responsible, Tom comforts Carlo by saying, "Nobody will blame your fight with Connie for causing this. Don't worry about that. I'll take care of that." Clearly, Tom was trying to put Carlo at ease. He knew that Carlo would be nervous as all eyes are on him, but Tom knew he needed to wait so that when the time comes, he can be dealt with properly. But in the meantime, he would feel secure and not cause any further damage. Understanding that the family was too vulnerable to act recklessly, and so he utilized another law of power, Law 35, which states, "Never seem to be in a hurry. Hurrying betrays a lack of control over yourself, and over time, always seem patient, as if you know that everything will come to you eventually. Become a detective of the right moment. Sniff out the spirit of the times, the trends that will carry you to power. Learn to stand back when the time is not yet ripe, and to strike fiercely when it's reached fruition." And since the Don knew it was not the right time to avenge his son, since he knew this would mean escalating the war further, he waited until he regrouped and was in a better position to avenge his fallen son. Another factor was that Vito couldn't bear making his daughter suffer and become a widow at such a young age as a consequence. Therefore, when Michael was back, the Don began preparing him to take over and plan on how they were to avenge Sonny's death, as well as regaining their position on top. So when Michael had taken over as Don and wanted to settle all the family business, he was briefed by Tom about everything that had happened while he was gone. There was some uncertainty in Michael. He had his doubts. But soon, Michael came to the conclusion that Carlo was the one who pointed out Sonny to Barzini's people, and that Barzini had been pulling the strings of multiple traitors within the family. So it was actually Tom who was the first to suspect that Carlo had a hand in this, but he knew this went a lot deeper. Since it was meticulously planned, where the assassins knew exactly when Sonny left the house and knew exactly where he was going, there was some serious planning that someone like Carlo couldn't have managed to do on his own. But when the Don had somewhat recovered, he had stated that he didn't want any inquiries made on who had killed his boy, so no one went out to verify that this was true. They had to wait, making sure that once they made their move, it would be swift and unstoppable, heeding the ancient advice of the art of war, crushing their enemies in one fell swoop. But here's where Michael's genius comes through, and where he managed to utilize one of the most powerful laws of power, Law 21, play a sucker to catch a sucker, seem dumber than your mark. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person. The trick then is to make your victims feel smart, and not just smart, but smarter than you are. Once convinced of this, they'll never suspect that you may have ulterior motives. After the peace deal, the Corleone family was in shambles. Outsiders lost a lot of respect and the once held fear towards the family. Add to that the fact that this clueless civilian kid was going to inherit this crumbling empire put him in an interesting position. Instead of instantly trying to prove himself, he actually played along subtly. In fact, to sell this illusion further, he began rewarding Carlo by giving him exactly what he wanted. This made Carlo feel like a genius. In his mind, he was playing both sides. He thought that on one hand, he had earned the status and power he craved since joining the Corleone family, where he thought Michael had finally noticed his true potential. But at the same time, whatever happens to the Corleone family, he still had a more powerful ally in Don Emilio Barzini, who owed him a great deal. Another victim of this law is none other than the master Don Barzini himself. The law states, "The easier they think it is to prey on you, the more easily you can turn the tables. The trick is also useful if you are ambitious and yet find yourself low in the hierarchy. Appearing less intelligent than you are, even a bit of a fool, is the perfect disguise." Essentially, don't think that being perceived as weak is always a disadvantage. In fact, the law is advising you that by looking harmless, no one will believe you harbor dangerous ambitions. By letting others think they have outsmarted you, you inadvertently make them feel superior. This is a feeling or even an illusion they'll find almost impossible to turn down. Something that both Don Barzini and Carlo desperately wanted to believe. Michael let Barzini, Carlo, and later, as you know, even Tessio, think they outsmarted him, making them feel superior and in control, and they could not resist the opportunity to bask in their perceived cunning and newfound power, making it easy for Michael to lead them happily into his trap. Their feeling of superiority made them less cautious and more likely to reveal his true intentions and past actions. It's always easier to deceive someone into believing that they're smarter than you by playing dumb than it is to convince them you are smarter than they are. Michael plays dumb by pretending to believe Carlo's lies and by acting as if he's oblivious to the betrayal. This deception is more effective than trying to convince Carlo of his intelligence, as it allows Carlo to drop his guard. Carlo's confidence in his perceived intelligence blinds him to Michael's true understanding and intentions, leading to his downfall.
Know how to make use of stupidity. The wisest man plays this card at times. There are occasions when the highest wisdom consists in appearing not to know. You must not be ignorant, but capable of playing it. It is not much good being wise among fools and sane among lunatics. He who poses as a fool is not a fool. The best way to be well received by all is to clothe yourself in the skin of the dumbest of brutes. Baltasar Gracian.
People with huge egos can't stand the idea of someone outsmarting them. They view themselves as geniuses, and since everyone around them never really truly challenges them on this, they continue to live in their delusion, even if they did nothing to earn their position. And so this makes them the perfect target of this law. always keep yourself in check too. Be brutally honest with yourself so that you don't fall for the same trap. The Chinese have a phrase, masquerading as a swine to kill the tiger. This refers to an ancient hunting technique in which the hunter clothes himself in the hide and snout of a pig and mimics its grunting. The mighty tiger thinks a pig is coming his way and lets it get close, savoring the prospect of an easy meal. But it's the hunter who has the last laugh. Masquerading as a swine works wonders on those who, like tigers, are arrogant and overconfident. The easier they think it is to prey on you, the more easily you can turn the tables. This trick is also useful if you're ambitious yet find yourself low in the hierarchy. In 1865, Europe was a tense chessboard of power struggles. Otto von Bismarck, the cunning Prussian counselor, wanted to outmaneuver Austria by getting them to sign a treaty that would greatly benefit Prussia. But this was no small feat, as the Austrians were not easily duped. The Austrian negotiator, Count Blom, was a seasoned diplomat and an avid card player. He loved the game quints and prided himself on being able to judge a man's character by how he played. Bismarck knew this about Blom and decided to use it to his advantage. The night before the crucial negotiations, Bismarck invited Blom to a friendly game of quints. Throughout the game, Bismarck acted the part of a bumbling fool, making absurd comments and displaying nervous energy. Blom thought he had gained valuable insight. He saw Bismarck as aggressive and rash, traits he believed made Bismarck incapable of careful planning or deceit. Feeling confident, Blom skimmed over the treaty the next day, assuming a fool like Bismarck wouldn't trick him with the details. As soon as Blom signed the treaty, Bismarck couldn't hide his excitement. He gleefully declared, "Well, I could have never believed that I should find an Austrian diplomat willing to sign that document." Blom realized too late that he had been outsmarted by Bismarck's elaborate act. The treaty, filled with terms favorable to Prussia, was now legally binding, thanks to Bismarck's clever deception. Bismarck later wrote about this night, saying, "That was the very last time I ever played quints. I played so recklessly that everyone was astonished. I lost several thousand thalers, but I succeeded in fooling Blom. He believed me to be more venturesome than I am, and I gave way." To reveal how smart you really are rarely pays off. It's better to always downplay your intelligence. But sometimes, if people find out you're actually much smarter than you seem, they'll admire you more for being humble than for showing off your brilliance. Early in your career, you might need to hint that you're sharper than your competition since you haven't yet proved yourself. However, as you move up, it's wise to tone it down, keeping in mind the wisdom of Law 1 of power. However, there's one time when it's good to show your smarts, according to Law 21 that is, when you need to cover up a deception. In these situations, appearances matter. If you seem knowledgeable and confident, people will believe you, which can help you out of tricky situations. Comment this below to see the outliers who made it to the most important part of the video. Warning: only use the following strategies in an ethical and moral manner. Do not use this knowledge to manipulate, deceive, or harm others for selfish or malicious purposes. Being part of the culture Mafia is about honor and integrity. The strategies described are intended to help you navigate complex situations and give you the upper hand. Misuse of these tactics can lead to broken trust, damaged relationships, and significant negative consequences. Always consider the impact of your actions and strive to act with honor. Like you just saw in The Godfather, Michael showed his genius way of dealing with people who have big egos. It's all about making someone feel smarter and more in control than they really are, so they let their guard down. Here's Michael's simple guide of how he did it. Number 1. Make them feel smart. What Michael did. Michael pretended to forgive Carlo and even gave him a better job in the family. Carlo thought he had fooled Michael and was now more important. He also did this when dealing with the other traitor Salvatore Tessio and the family's arch-rival Don Emilio Barzini. Why it works: when people feel smart and important, they stop being careful. Carlo felt safe and didn't see the trap coming. Number 2. Hide your real plans. What Michael did? Michael acted like he didn't know how Carlo helped to take out Sonny. He played dumb and let Barzini think he was winning. Why it works. When you hide how smart you are, the other person relaxes and makes mistakes. Carlo thought he was smarter than Michael, but he was wrong. Number 3. Use their overconfidence. What Michael did. Carlo's big ego made him believe he was untouchable. He admitted his role in Sonny's death, thinking that Michael would let it slide. Why it works? Overconfident people get careless. Carlo's ego led him right into Michael's trap. Number 4. Get them to reveal themselves. What Michael did. By pretending to trust Carlo, Michael got him to confess everything.
Admit what you did. Don't be afraid, Carlo. Come on, you think I make my sister a widow? I'm godfather to your son, Carlo.
Who's buzzing?
Why it works? When people think they're safe, they spill secrets. Carlo thought confessing would save him, but it sealed his fate. Now, this will depend on the context, but for the sake of simplicity, let's break down how you can effectively use these strategies in a scenario where you want to gain an advantage in a competitive environment, where you're under pressure by a highly egotistical and manipulative individual who is incredibly insecure. Someone who, if triggered, will make his sole aim to undermine your success and bolster their own position of power at any cost. Here's what to do. 1. Flatter and listen. What to do. Make the person feel smart and important. Compliment their ideas and listen to them. Why it works? When people feel valued and respected, they're more likely to open up and trust you, allowing you to gather valuable insights and information. By showing genuine interest in their thoughts, you build a bond that makes them feel comfortable and appreciated. This can lead them to share more about their plans and strategies, giving you a clearer picture of their intentions. 2. Play dumb. What to do. Hide how much you really know. Let them think they're in control. Why it works? By appearing less knowledgeable, you disarm their defenses and make them feel superior. This encourages them to share more freely, revealing their true intentions and vulnerabilities. When they believe they have the upper hand, they become less guarded and more likely to make careless remarks or decisions that you can exploit later. 3. Watch their ego. What to do. Let their overconfidence work against them. They'll make mistakes and reveal their plans. Why it works? Overconfident individuals often underestimate risks and overlook details, leading them to make errors in judgment or reveal sensitive information without realizing it. Their need to show off or boast can make them careless, providing you with critical insights into their weaknesses and future moves. This makes it easier to anticipate their actions and counter them effectively. There is one more, but if I'm being completely honest with you, it's too dangerous to have discussed this openly. After all, you never know if there's a Carlo lurking amongst us. I can only trust it with the culture mafia's inner circle. The people I know will not misuse the knowledge. But now, it's equally important to know how to counter this strategy. As you know, the world is not all sunshine and rainbows. Unfortunately, we're all bound to come across a few manipulative individuals who will use this law against you. I'll be sending you the antidote in our newsletter and channel members. Sign up now to not miss it. In the end, Michael Corleone's strategy came down to finding a clever way to handle people with big egos. By making them feel superior, you can control the situation without them realizing it. It's all about playing the long game and turning their ego into your advantage.
They dispute not in order to find or even to seek truth, but for victory and to appear the more learned and strenuous upholders of a contrary opinion. Such persons should be avoided by all who have not a good breastplate of patience. Giordano Bruno.
Arguing with people who have big egos is usually a waste of time because it rarely gets you anywhere. They always think that they're right and smarter than everyone else, so they won't listen to your arguments. Confronting them just makes them defensive and aggressive, escalating the situation. Don't feel the need to constantly prove your intelligence or superiority. I really like how Dale Carnegie put it. Listen to this. Avoid arguing with a fool, for he will drag you down to his level and then beat you with experience. Plus, arguing gives them a platform to show off and feel even more superior. It's better to let them think they're winning than to engage in a pointless fight. people with big egos can also be vindictive and hold grudges. Arguing with them might provoke retaliation or attempts to undermine you later. Avoid creating enemies out of such people. By not arguing, you stay in a position where you can subtly influence them. Agreeing with them, or at least not opposing them, keeps you in their good graces and lets you guide outcomes indirectly. Instead of arguing, learn from Michael. Make them feel smart and important to keep them calm and open to your influence. Hide your true thoughts and let them believe they're in control. Their overconfidence will lead them to make mistakes or reveal too much, giving you the upper hand without a direct confrontation. When they think they're winning, they'll share useful information, which you can use to your advantage later. Arguing with people who have big egos is counterproductive. Instead, use flattery, play dumb, and let their ego work against them. This approach avoids conflict and puts you in a position to subtly influence and outmaneuver them, just like Michael Corleone did with Carlo Rizzi. Avoid the toxic types. Let them think what they want to think and continue to thrive. Now, Michael used a handful of laws of power during his climb. Watch this to uncover how.